Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin here at 2FBC Tactical, and I want to talk a little bit more about what happened the other day as it pertains to the National Firearms Act with the $0 tax stamp items. So let's dive right into it. All right, everyone. Thanks for continuing to tune in. Please like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate all of you guys. We have some new apparel coming out too that I'm super excited to show you guys. I think you'll like it. Maybe some off-color humor shirts and even some underwear. So we're pretty excited about that. Now, the purpose of this video today is to talk about what's happened when it pertains to the $0 tax stamp items in the big beautiful bill that was just ruled unconstitutional in that North District of Texas court. Now, that's in the Fifth Circuit, so we're here in Minnesota, so that's not governed by the Fifth Circuit, though it does apply to anyone who is a GOA member, FPC, silencer shop, so on and so forth. And I do want to put a few disclaimers out there. First off, I'm not a lawyer, so the purpose of this video is not to give legal advice. Secondly, when it comes to what's going on right now with this ruling, it is stayed pending appeal up to 7 days. And there is that's what I want to talk about today, is there is a lot of questions about this. Now, when it comes to the ruling itself, could not applaud it more. It's very clear in previous Supreme Court precedent and the way the National Firearms Act is written, how it was argued that this is a tax law. And that's what I want to highlight. This ruling is not done on Second Amendment grounds. It's done under the taxing authority of Congress. So that means that they didn't even need to get to the Second Amendment ruling. They just are doing this based on the fact that since there's no money coming in revenue to the government, you cannot apply the rest of the tax law to it arbitrarily. You also cannot change, in retrospect, what this particular law was written for. So this law was written as a tax law, not as a commerce law. And that is a very big separation. So when we look at like the Gun Control Act of 1968, that has to do a lot with interstate commerce. That is not written as a tax law. The National Firearms Act was exclusively written as a tax law. And while the federal government was trying to make a switcheroo argument that, well, these items still fall underneath interstate commerce, therefore we can just change what the purpose of this law is supposed to be without Congress doing so. The court's like, no, you cannot. It was written as a tax code. It's residing in tax code. Therefore, it is a tax, not commerce code, interstate commerce code. Therefore, you cannot just switch it arbitrarily. That's a lot to say there, just to say that the way this is done matters. And I'm going to raise two questions that I hope we get some answers from actual attorneys. I'm going to send this video out to Mark Smith from the Four Boxes Diner, for instance, because he would be an excellent resource for these questions. So the first question is, the way the order from the court is written, that yes, they overturned the NFA as applied to these items that are $0 tax items because there's no revenue coming into the government. Which means that someone could just turn the tax back on and all of a sudden these items go right back on the National Firearms Act, the way that this order is written. Now, there will be other arguments that this does go into full effect nationwide and we flood the market with millions of untaxed items, and then they try to retroactively go out and put them back on the NFA. There will most likely be Second Amendment challenges. You got to think there's going to be a whole slew of court litigation on it. But the way I read this is that if you just turn the revenue back on, even if it's to $1, right? All of a sudden, these items go right back on to the National Firearms Act. That's the way the order is written. Also, these items, let's just say suppressors, for instance, still fall underneath the firearms category, meaning that you'll have to do a 4473 when it comes, if this was to go into full effect. So it's not something that can just get shipped directly to your door as just a part. When it comes to suppressors, they will be treated as firearms. And another question I have, though, for those out there that are, attorneys and smarter than I am, is for us FFLs, the court was pretty clear that they're not touching the Gun Control Act sections meaning that we're the ones that can sell suppressors to the general public. We're governed by what they call an SOT, a special occupational tax. It's something that we pay every year, and that gives us the ability to sell suppressors and other class 3 items to the general public. So if they're leaving that in place, how are we supposed to apply this ruling if it is to stand at this court level? Because the way I read it and the way the court says it, it seems to be as applied to the plaintiff. So if you're a member of GOA, FPC, Palmetto State and all that, that's great. You're covered by it. But it could be interpreted that not everybody in the nation is covered by it. How are we supposed to determine if you're an FPC, GOA member or whatever to know that this suppressor is fine to be sold this way, but to somebody else who's not a member, it's not okay to be sold another way? And maybe I'm misreading the court order, and again, I'm open to corrections here. But since it is written the way it's written, it does appear that somehow we're supposed to verify. And then since we're governed by the SOT and FFL stuff in the Gun Control Act, which is not being addressed at all in this court order, then the ATF still has authority over us. So us local gun shops and stuff are screwed, I guess, in the sense that they could just yank our licenses if we do something wrong, and all of a sudden we're out of business, and we have no specific remedy as a FFL. It doesn't appear to be anyway in this ruling. The way I read this court order is this must go to the Supreme Court to go nationwide. Like, we have to undo this federally for all people. I don't see how it can be an as-applied challenge to these plaintiffs and only these plaintiffs, and there's a way for us to actually make this work in the real world. And this is coming from the guy who doesn't believe the National Firearms Act should exist at all. It's unconstitutional. I'm fine with people buying machine guns. I'm just going to put that out there. I think there should be a legal way for us to do so outside of the current framework of the National Firearms Act, which is uber restrictive. So that's coming from me, who is as pro-gun on this issue as possible.
Quick pause in the video, guys, to give a shout out to our channel sponsor, Patriot Mobile. Now, I've personally been a member of Patriot Mobile for several years now. Everyone is using a cell phone these days. So the question is, why not support someone who supports you, who stands up for the rights that you and I hold dear? And Patriot Mobile puts their money where their mouth is by donating a portion of every dollar they make to the causes that you and I hold dear. They use the same 5G networks that every other major provider uses. You're not sacrificing service. You're supporting a company that will support you. They're going to give our listeners a special discount. Using the code SHALLNOT and clicking the link down below, you will get a free month when you switch to Patriot Mobile. With that, let's get back to the video.
All right, and that's a lot of detail here that I am very curious about, and that's where I hope we'll get a little bit more clarification from some of those big names out there, Washington Gun Law, Armed Attorneys, or even Mark Smith at the Four Boxes Diners. Because again, I'm not a lawyer. I read these court briefings. I do study. I like to think I understand a lot, but I do want to make sure that we have all the clarity, especially from the FFL SOT, which is the customer-facing interface. This is how you're going to acquire these things when the time comes. And I'm wondering if there's a backdoor issue here with us being enforced upon by the ATF, which means that ultimately you're enforced upon too, regardless of this court hearing. And these are the questions that I have. I hope that the long-term answer is these things are permanently removed from the National Firearms Act. I really hope that these things are ruled on Second Amendment grounds too, meaning that you can't just go through a reconciliation bill and turn the taxes back on and all of a sudden the National Firearms Act is back in effect. No, this bill needs to be, or this law needs to be dead and gone forever and all time. These are the questions that I have. So I do appreciate you guys checking out our video. And again, if you have more questions, please reach out to me. I would like to answer these things. I would like to do more Q's and A's. This is a huge ruling, and I'm not saying it's not. It's just something that I think needs to be flushed out a little bit more too, to understand whether the actual effects to you and I, the end user. Because believe me, I'm super excited for this. I want to be able to sell these things over the counter. I have a list personally of SBRs that I want. Maybe the FMP90 for those of you who are Stargate fans might be one of the first ones I buy for myself. But like these are the things that I want answered to as we move forward with this. Now, full disclosure, we have our own IOI. We reached out to him and he did not have guidance on this. They're still working through it. These were his words, not mine. So hopefully we get more guidance in the coming days. It's the ATF. Odds are probably not. We won't get any guidance at all on this. But anyway, these are the thoughts that are going through us FFL minds. And let's just put this out there for those of you super excited to go out and buy your stuff. Don't take it out on the local gun shop, the small business owner trying to keep their business if they're unsure exactly what they're supposed to do in this moment. This is a unprecedented ruling in the sense that the National Firearms Act has been in effect for 90 years at this point. So this is something that we're all working through, and we want to do the right thing. We also are pro-gun, but we also need to keep our businesses. There's a lot to balance here. Anyway, keep tuning in. We'll see you on the next video, guys, and keep your powder dry.